A little girl clutched a faded photo to her chest, her tiny hands trembling. In it she sat grinning on the back of a roaring Harley, her arms wrapped around a bearded biker. "He wasn't your real granddad," people told her. But this picture would prove otherwise. Before we start this story, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Also, please subscribe to the channel. It will help us to bring you more inspiring stories every day. In the quiet town of Maple Creek, 9-year-old Lila Brooks grew up hearing whispers. Her mother, Jess, worked long hours at the local diner, and Lila often stayed with her step-grandfather, Hank Ryder. Hank wasn't blood. He had married Jess's late mother years before, but to Lila he was everything. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a weathered face and a leather vest hanging in the hallway, Hank was a man the town looked at sideways. "Biker trash," some muttered, but Lila never cared. To her, he was the one who packed her school lunches, told stories by the fire, and patched her bike tires when they went flat. Then came the night Hank passed unexpectedly in his sleep. The funeral was small, whispers heavy. Lila overheard kids at school sneering, "He wasn't even your real granddad." The words stabbed deeper than she could explain. She clutched at memories that felt like they were slipping through her fingers, desperate for proof he had been hers. After Hank's passing, Lila spent evenings in silence. She sat on the porch steps, Rusty the neighborhood dog curled beside her, staring at the empty chair Hank once filled. Jess tried to comfort her, but grief had no easy remedy. "He loved you, Lila, that's what matters," Jess said gently. Still, Lila carried the echo of cruel words at school. "Not your real granddad." One Saturday, rummaging through an old trunk in the attic, she found scraps of Hank's life. A worn leather vest, patches faded by years of sun, and a single photograph tucked in the lining. In it she was 4 years old, perched on the back of Hank's Harley, her tiny arms wrapped around him, his wide grin softening his rugged face. Her heart leapt, proof. She clutched the photo like treasure, running down the stairs. But Jess looked at it and frowned. "Where did you find this?" "I've never seen it before." A mystery had just begun. The photograph ignited questions Lila couldn't ignore. Who had taken it? Why had Hank kept it hidden in his vest, instead of framing it on the wall? That night she sat with the picture beneath her pillow, whispering to herself, "You were real. You were mine." The next morning she carried it to school, but instead of silencing her classmates, the sneers grew sharper. "Anyone can fake a picture," one boy taunted. Lila's cheeks burned, tears blurring her vision. She ran home, collapsing on her bed, the photo clutched tight. Later, Jess found her. "Baby, people talk because they don't understand," she said softly, brushing Lila's hair back. "Hank didn't need blood to love you." But Lila shook her head, determination burning through the sadness. She needed more than comfort. She needed the truth. What she didn't know was that someone else in town, someone tied to Hank's old biker days, was already watching over her. That someone was Jax Monroe, a Hell's Angel from Hank's old riding crew. Jax was in his late 50s, his beard streaked with grey, his leather vest heavy with miles of loyalty. When news of Hank's death reached him, Jax rode into Maple Creek quietly, parking his Harley outside the cemetery late at night. He placed a single patch on Hank's grave, "After always, forever, forever, always." As he stood there, he saw a small figure approach, Lila clutching her photo, tears streaking her face. She didn't notice him at first, whispering, "I miss you, Granddad." Jax's chest tightened. He remembered the day that picture was taken. He had snapped it himself, laughing as Hank lifted the giggling girl onto the Harley. Jax stepped forward, his boots crunching gravel. "That photo's real, little one." "I took it." Lila looked up, startled, eyes wide. And in that instant her world shifted. Proof didn't just live in a picture. It breathed in the brotherhood Hank left behind. Jax knelt down, his heavy frame surprisingly gentle. "Your granddad bragged about you every ride we went on," he said, his voice gravelly but warm. "Blood don't make family. Loyalty does, and Hank, he was loyal to you." Lila's lip trembled as she held out the photo. "You took this?" Jax nodded. "Clear as day. You were just a little firecracker that wouldn't let go of him." He loved that picture. Jess, who had followed quietly from the distance, stepped closer, wary but listening. For the first time, Lila felt like her heart was steady again. She wasn't clinging to faded memories. She had living proof. Jack stood and placed a rough hand on her shoulder. "You want to know your granddad's truth? Come see where he rode. Come meet the men who called him brother." The rumble of Jax's Harley broke the silence as he handed her a helmet. A journey had begun. The next weekend, Jax pulled up outside the diner where Jess worked. Lila stood waiting, clutching her helmet with nervous excitement. Jess hesitated, her eyes flicking from her daughter to the biker. "Are you sure?" she asked. Lila nodded firmly. "I need to know who he really was." With a sigh, Jess kissed her forehead. "Stay close, and hold on tight." Moments later, Lila sat behind Jax on the Harley, her arms wrapped around the vest that smelled faintly of leather and road dust. The engine roared, rattling her bones, but fear melted into exhilaration. They thundered down back roads Hank once rode, the wind tangling Lila's hair, her laughter echoing across fields. For the first time since Hank's passing, she felt alive, like he was beside her, guiding her small hands to grip tighter. Jax glanced in the mirror, a smile tugging his lips. The girl wasn't afraid. She was Hank's granddaughter in every way that mattered. They arrived at an old clubhouse on the edge of the county. The building was worn, its paint peeling, but the flags and patched jackets inside spoke of decades of loyalty. Bikers greeted Jax with firm handshakes and curious glances toward Lila. "This is Hank Ryder's girl," Jax introduced. Silence followed, then nods of recognition. One man, Crusher, a mountain of muscle with kind eyes, crouched to her level. "He never stopped talking about you, kid. Always carried your drawings in his saddlebags." Lila's eyes widened. "My drawings?" He nodded, pulling a crumpled paper from his vest, one she'd made years ago of Hank and his Harley. She gasped, recognizing her childish scrawl. "He kept it?" Crusher's voice softened. "Every mile." Tears welled in her eyes as she clutched the paper to her chest. For the first time she understood. Hank hadn't just loved her quietly at home. He had carried her with him on every road. That evening, the bikers sat around a fire pit outside the clubhouse. The flames flickered against leather vests as stories poured out. Tales of Hank's stubborn loyalty, his booming laugh, the way he'd slow the whole convoy just so he could call Lila on long rides. Lila listened wide-eyed, Rusty the dog curled beside her feet, the photo resting safely in her lap. Jax leaned close and whispered, "He wasn't just your granddad at home, Lila. He was your granddad everywhere. Don't let anyone tell you different." Her heart swelled, but doubt still lingered. "Then why did everyone say he wasn't real family?" Jax's eyes hardened. "Because people fear what they don't understand. But blood don't make kin. Love does." The bikers nodded, voices rumbling in agreement. For the first time, Lila felt surrounded not by strangers but by an invisible shield, an entire brotherhood standing behind her. She wasn't just Hank's granddaughter. She was part of his legacy. The next week at school the taunts came again. "He wasn't even your granddad," the boy sneered. But this time Lila didn't flinch. She pulled the drawing from her backpack, the one Hank had carried on the road, and held it high. "He rode with this every mile. Tell me he wasn't family." The classroom fell silent. Even the teacher paused, eyes softening. Later that afternoon, Lila walked home to find Jax waiting at the curb. "How'd it go, kid?" She grinned shyly. "I think they believe me now," Jax chuckled. "You don't need them to believe. You already know." He handed her a worn patch from Hank's old vest. "He wanted you to have this." Lila cradled it like treasure. She realized she didn't need to prove anything anymore, not to classmates, not to townsfolk. Her granddad's love was stitched into leather, carried in drawings, and etched in the roar of engines that still shook the ground. One Saturday, Jack surprised Lila and Jess with a ride to Maple Creek Park. Dozens of bikers lined the lot, their Harleys gleaming in the sun. At the center, a banner read, "Ride for Hank Ryder." The event had been organized by the Angels in Hank's honor. Families gathered, children waved flags, and riders from across counties thundered into town. Jess wiped tears as Lila was lifted onto the back of Jax's bike, her tiny arms hugging him, just as she once clung to Hank. Cameras flashed, capturing her laughter as she rode shotgun again. Later, Jax handed her a framed print of the photo he had taken years ago, this time paired with the new one side by side. "Now you've got proof," he said softly. Lila hugged the frame to her chest. For the first time, she felt whole. Hank wasn't just a memory. He was alive in every mile, every story, every brother who still rode for him. The weeks after the memorial ride changed everything for Lila. Townsfolk who once dismissed Hank as just a biker now spoke of him with respect. Jess noticed it too, the way people at the diner leaned in when they heard Hank's name, the softened tones when they spoke about him. But the biggest change was in Lila. She no longer shrank when classmates questioned her family. She walked taller, the photo tucked safely into her backpack. One afternoon, she sat on the porch steps with Jax, watching Rusty chase fireflies in the yard. "Do you think Granddad knows I still ride?" she asked quietly. Jax looked at her, eyes glinting with firelight. "Kid, he's riding every mile with you. You don't forget love like that." Lila's throat tightened, tears spilling silently. For the first time, she believed it, not as a comfort, but as truth. Hank wasn't gone. He lived on the road in every story, in every rumble of engines. At school, the teasing finally stopped. One day, her teacher asked the class to bring in something that represented their family. Lila stood at the front holding the framed photos, the one from years ago, and the new one with Jax. "This is my granddad, Hank," she said firmly. "People told me he wasn't real family. But love is real. He rode with me, he carried my drawings, and he never let me go." The room fell silent, even the boys who once teased her looking away. The teacher placed a hand over her heart. "Thank you, Lila." That night, Jess tucked her into bed, pride softening her tired eyes. You've got more strength than I ever had at your age." Lila smiled sleepily. "I learned from him." Jess kissed her forehead. "And from you I'm learning, too." In the quiet dark, the photo glowed faintly on the nightstand, a beacon of love that no cruel word could undo. Summer came, and with it, another ride. This time, Jax lifted Lila onto the Harley without hesitation, the other bikers cheering as her tiny arms wrapped around his vest. Jess watched from the curb, her nerves tempered by trust. The convoy rumbled down Main Street, townsfolk lining the sidewalks with flags and clapping hands. Lila's laughter soared above the engines, a sound that stitched hearts together. Riker, the chapter president, raised his hand in salute as they passed the diner. Later at the rest stop, Lila pulled out Hank's patch, the one Jax had given her. She held it high, her eyes fierce. "I'm keeping him with me, always." The men nodded solemnly, their voices echoing as they chanted Afa, "Always, forever, forever, always." Lila pressed the patch over her chest, feeling its weight. It wasn't just cloth. It was proof of a bond stronger than blood. For the first time, she didn't just feel like Hank's granddaughter. She felt like his legacy. But grief has sharp edges, even softened by love. One evening, Lila overheard two adults outside the diner still whispering cruelly. "She clings to that biker like he was some saint. He wasn't her blood." The words stung anew, cutting deeper than she expected. That night, she sat in her room, clutching the photo, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. Jess found her and gathered her close. "People talk because they don't understand. But you—" She tapped Lila's chest. "You know the truth." Still, doubt gnawed at her. The next day, she told Jax what she'd heard. He crouched low, meeting her eyes. "You want the loudest proof?" She nodded. He pulled out his phone and showed her a short video, grainy but clear. Hank, with his booming laugh, holding her as a toddler on the Harley. His voice was steady. "This one's my granddaughter." "She's my whole world," Lila sobbed, clutching the screen. At last, there was no doubt left to steal from her. That video spread further than anyone expected. Jax posted it with Hank's brother's blessing, captioned, "Family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's loyalty." Within days, it was shared across the county, then across biker circles nationwide. Messages poured in, strangers writing, "Your granddad would be proud, and he's riding with you forever." Lila sat with Jess at the diner, reading the comments aloud, her smile returning piece by piece. One Saturday, she walked into the clubhouse clutching the framed photos and the patch. She stood before the bikers and said, "Thank you for helping me prove he was my granddad." The room fell quiet, then erupted in cheers, engines revving outside in thunderous salute. Jax lifted her onto a chair so her voice carried. "He wasn't just mine. He was ours. But he'll always be my granddad." The men bowed their heads, the firelight flickering across leather and steel. For the first time, Lila felt peace, like Hank himself was nodding in approval. Autumn arrived, painting Maple Creek in gold and crimson. Lila's home felt lighter now, laughter returning where grief once sat heavy. Every weekend, the Angels stopped by to check in, parking their Harleys by the porch, Rusty barking happily at their boots. One crisp evening, Jax handed Lila a small leather vest. It was child-sized, stitched carefully, and on the back was a single patch, Ryder's Legacy. Lila's eyes widened as she slipped it on, the leather soft against her shoulders. Jess wiped her eyes, overcome. "He'd be so proud," she whispered. Lila stood straighter, her chest swelling. She wasn't pretending anymore. She was carrying Hank's name forward. That night, she wore the vest to bed, whispering into the dark, "I'm riding with you. Granddad." The wind rattled softly against the window, like an engine's low hum as if answering back. The next month, the Angels organized a community event in Hank's honor, a charity ride for children who'd lost family. Rows of bikes lined up, engines purring like lions. Lila rode shotgun with Jax, her little vest gleaming. Dozens of kids were invited to sit on Harleys, smiling shyly as bikers handed out helmets and patches. Jess volunteered at the food stand, watching in awe as rough men with tattoos knelt gently to tie shoelaces and wipe children's tears. Lila helped too, guiding a small boy onto a bike and whispering, "Don't be scared. My granddad taught me it's safe when someone loves you." The boy grinned, and his laughter mixed with the roar of engines. The event raised thousands for families, but more than that, it stitched trust between the town and the bikers. For Lila, it was proof that Hank's spirit wasn't locked in the past. It was still building something bigger. Winter came, bringing silence to the roads. Lila often sat by the fire with Jess, scrolling through photos from the rides. One evening, Jax arrived carrying a weathered box. Inside were Hank's old keepsakes, patches, a pocket knife, and a journal. "I wanted this saved for family," Jax said. Lila opened the journal carefully, the handwriting messy but strong. Page after page spoke of rides across states, nights under open skies, but woven into the stories were notes about her. "Lila laughed today," one entry read. "Best sound on earth." Another, "Someday I'll teach her to ride." Tears streamed down her face as she read, each word proof that she had been his world. Jess hugged her tightly, her own tears falling. "He gave you everything he had, baby." Lila pressed the journal to her chest. It wasn't just memory anymore. It was written truth, inked forever in his own hand. By spring, Lila's story had spread beyond Maple Creek. A biker magazine published Hank's photo beside hers, the headline, "Family Written in Loyalty." Letters arrived from across the country, other kids who had lost step-parents or guardians, but knew love was real. Jess read them aloud, pride shining in her eyes. One letter from a girl in Oregon said, "I thought my stepdad didn't count, but your story showed me he does." Lila folded it carefully into Hank's journal, whispering, "We're helping others now." That summer, during the annual Angel Ride, Riker lifted Lila onto the lead Harley. The convoy thundered through Maple Creek, townsfolk waving flags, tears streaming down cheeks. As the wind rushed past her, Lila gripped the vest tighter. She wasn't proving anything anymore. She was celebrating. Every mile forward felt like Hank's laughter echoing in the engines, carrying her into a future where his love would never fade. On a warm evening, nearly a year after Hank's passing, Lila sat on the porch with Jess and Jax. Rusty dozed at their feet, the air alive with crickets. Lila held the framed photos, the old one of her riding shotgun with Hank, and the new one from the charity ride. She smiled, no tears this time. "They can say what they want," she whispered. "But he'll always be my granddad," Jax's voice rumbled softly. "And now the whole world knows it too." Jess kissed the top of her daughter's head, heart full. The sound of Harleys drifted in from the distance, a Brotherhood still riding strong. Lila lifted the photo toward the horizon, whispering, "I'll carry you forever." The engines grew louder, rolling like thunder across the night. And in that sound she heard him, Hank, her granddad. Not gone but riding on, love is stronger than blood. Lila proved family is built in loyalty, laughter, and the roads we ride together.